Welcome to the Agent of Wealth podcast with Marc Bautis from Bautis Financial. In this podcast, Marc helps guide you towards financial freedom, ensure you never run out of money, and create a balance in life that prioritizes what is most important to you. Join us for this journey as Marc draws from years of expertise and guest experts to solve the multiple wealth building challenges involved in your financial life.
Welcome back to the Agent of Wealth. This is your host, Marc Bautis. On today's show, I brought on a special guest, Brent Bowers. Brett's an investor coach with a focus on buying and selling vacant land. As an Army officer with 8 years of service, Brent was spending a great deal of time away from his family and wanted to be more present with his wife and children. So he began investing in real estate as a way to support his family while having more time to spend with them. In a short period of time, Brent was able to expand his business, hire a team, and most importantly, spend quality time with his family while still working hard and helping others. Brent, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Marc. Appreciate you having me. I'm excited about this. We kind of have a similar background. I'm excited to share with your listeners.
Great. Yeah, so I'm excited about the topic. You know, I think the listeners of the show really have an affinity towards real estate investing, and your angle on it about talking about vacant land, because I think a lot of them think real estate investing and only think maybe like single family investment properties or multifamily investment properties. And, you know, it's really good to talk about some other avenues of how people can invest in it. So maybe you can give us a little bit of background on kind of how I know you spent some time in the Army, how you got from there to, you know, investing and specializing in vacant land.
Yeah, and I love the name of your show too, Agent of Wealth. You know, what is wealth? You know, a lot of people think, oh, I just need a ton of money. I want to buy whatever I want to. Well, wealth for me is a little bit different than a ton of money. Yes, it takes money to live our lives how we want, but wealth for me is more time freedom, financial freedom. You know, I don't have to have like tons of money sitting in the bank, but I have to have enough coming in to take care of my outgoing, my expenses, and that was financial freedom for me. And then geography freedom. So I love the name of your show because I feel like the land business has given me so much wealth because it allows me to, you know, go skiing in Colorado for a week, or, you know, the time freedom and the financial freedom of the notes coming in. So as far as my background, why did I want wealth? Was because I did 8.5 years in the military, and I was told what to do, where to be, when to wake up for almost 8.5 years of my life. And out of those 8.5 years, I was probably only sleeping in my own personal bed for about half of that time, about 4 of those years. So I had no freedom, no time freedom, no wealth. I mean, I was paid okay. Everything was taken care of. My clothing and my hair, I had allowances for these kind of things. But I was not doing life on my own terms. So that's why I'm excited to be talking about wealth today, because it's different for me than it probably is different for most. So how did I get started? I actually purchased my first property in 2007, got my real estate license in 2007. And then 2008 kind of crash happened to me. I was listening to brokers with 13, 14 years of experience in the business, and they were quitting, they were tapping out. And guess what? It went in my mind that I should quit too. So I was like, look, I'm going to join the military. I'm going back to school. So I'm 24 years old in basic training. I was quite humbled. I had a real estate license, owned an investment property, was married, and used to have another business. And I'm starting all over again. I recommend that for everyone. Like, everyone should be humbled like I was.
I'm sure it's a lesson. It's a great learning experience. And like you mentioned, wealth means different things to different people. But I guess something clicked. You know, you started going through basic training, and was it something that clicked during that, or at some point in your military career where you said, all right, you know, I want more. I want to do different things. And like you said, to you, one of the important things was spending more time with your family.
I did not even know it at the time. I wouldn't say clicked. I'm a very slow learner, Marc. I would say it was a progression of clicks. And I look back and I'm like, oh, this is what caused that. So I was already an entrepreneur. I already wanted to be wealthy. I just, you know, got my butt kicked for almost a year because I literally handed over my business after I bought that first rental property, moved to the coast, and was going to be a real estate rock star. And ultimately, I drove people around in my car for a week at a time to find them a rental property. And that's back before we would collect the application and do the background credit check before we would let them see the house. Things have changed quite a bit since 2008. But I would drive these people around for weeks and maybe make $300. So I wasn't paying the bills. I wasn't cutting it. So I'd always been an entrepreneur. So when I went through basic training and AIT, I was always thinking of little ways to make money. 2 deployments to Afghanistan. I was like, how can I make money here? And then ultimately, when I got back to the United States in 2013, I was pretty much gone from end of 2009 to 2013. The Army pulls me out of Afghanistan the second time. My first wife had just left me because I was gone all the time, which I don't blame her. So the Army sends me to school. I buy a house right next to the college and start doing something called house hacking. So I basically rented out all the rooms and I made money and lived there. So that was kind of the start back to my entrepreneur, excitement. And then I bought another rental property and then started wholesaling houses to pay for the college courses and a sweet car that I bought. But, that kind of kept going and going. And I met the woman of my dreams, my wife now. And we pretty much, had our first baby very shortly after getting married. And that's when it clicked. I was like, I need to stay home more. I need to be home more. I do not want history repeating itself. And now there's a baby involved. So I started building my business because I wanted to earn at least $8,000 a month coming in automatically. That way I would be financially free enough to get out of the military. So I was doing it with houses haphazardly. And then I started mailing the vacant land list, like not the vacant land list. I would start mailing vacant land on the tax delinquent list. And then my phone blew up. I did a couple deals in a short amount of time. And the second deal ended up giving me a passive income of $400 a month. And I was hooked. I was like, there is no way that I can continue to keep doing this. And I did. And before I knew it, I was making almost $6,000 a month in about 6 months. And I was like, if I just continue rinsing and repeating the same things, I'll have a passive income of $100,000 in a few short years, $100,000 a month. And we just kept pushing it. And before I knew it, I was at $9,800 a month. And I remember having the conversation with my wife, I can get out of the military now. And I did.
Yeah. So I guess one of the questions I have, and you mentioned passive income. And, when I think of real estate and passive income, I think of single residence, single family, multifamily, where someone is in there and they're paying a monthly rent. What does that look like on the vacant land side? Are you making the vacant land an RV park, or how does passive income with vacant land work?
It's funny you said RV park because I'm actually buying one right now. It's not RV park yet. And then someone from 29 Palms, California just messaged me about a RV park last night. And then you say it again. So I think the Lord works in three ways.
Yeah.
Like he just keeps putting these things in front of me. But no, the answer is no. I'm not doing anything to it. Basically, I'm getting the land at a crazy discount and I'm getting it under contract. And I'll find my buyer first with a down payment large enough. Most of the time I want it to be large enough to get my investment out of the property. And then I create a note. Now, do I always do that? Does that always happen? No. But in the beginning, I needed it to because I didn't have discretionary funds. Like that was diaper money I was spending and rent money.
Right.
And it's truly passive because these buyers are not calling me saying, hey, the toilet stopped up again. Hey, the roof's leaking. Hey, blah, blah, blah. Because I do have rentals. I have almost 20 something doors and those aren't passive. I have to put a property manager in place. And let me tell you, you can almost set your watch on this. Something will always break at least every 9 months.
Yeah. What's the end buyer with the vacant land? So you find this vacant land, you can purchase it at a discount. Are they buying it and going to develop it, or are they basically doing the same thing you are and kind of going down the road with it?
So I look for the end buyer that wants to keep it one day, that wants to own a piece of American land, have the freedom to go out and camp or get off grid. I was just working with a student named Sean right before we jumped on this call. I was hanging out with him before we jumped on this podcast. He has a piece of land that he found in the mountains of North Carolina that's worth $25,000. The realtor said they're selling for $25,000 in this area for this much land. And he bought it for $5,000. That's a 5x return, 5, 10, 15, 20, $25,000. So he has a huge margin of safety on this piece of land. And he's telling me, he's like, Brent, it is off grid. Like there's no cell phone service. I think it's going to be hard to sell this. And I was like, wait a minute, think about this. The world has changed with COVID. We're all working from home. We're always connected. The boss is always texting us and calling us. And then we've got to be on Skype calls. We're basically working 7 days a week now because we can never get away from work. What if you sold this piece of land as off-grid, no cell phone service, escape the digital leash for 2 days and own your piece of land for $199 a month? Like that's how he's going to sell that piece of land on emotion. The buyer is the person that wants to get away from the digital leash for at least a couple of days because there's no cell phone coverage. It's in the middle of nowhere in the mountains. So that's who our buyers are. I'm not looking for me. I have people all the time approach me and say, hey, I'll pay you what you paid for it. No, I want to seller finance it and create a note, and get a passive income on it.
Are you looking for motivated sellers? Because I guess the question that comes up is, how is he able to buy something for 5,000 that's worth 20 or 25? Are you constantly trying to find some kind of situation where you can get something for that deep discount?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm not paying retail for the land because I'm selling it for retail, and I'm also seller financing it. I have to have a big enough margin of safety, a big enough discount so I can mark it up and make a profit on it. So yes, I'm looking for motivated sellers, people that have a problem or a challenge that I can solve. They inherited it 5 years ago. They've been paying the taxes for 27 years. Oh, we went out to Colorado on our honeymoon and we purchased a piece of land and we have never done anything with it for 30 years. I just want to get rid of it. That's the people I'm looking for. 99 out of 100 people don't need my services. Like, they can list it on the MLS right now, because land has turned into more of a seller's market in the last 18 months. There's been such a demand for it. I don't know if it's because I'm getting on all these podcasts or
Must be what it is. Yeah.
people are wanting to push out now. Like, we also do houses too, but if we have a house on a piece of land right now, it's like gone because people are looking to get out a little further, have a little bit more room to grow.
Yeah. And you mentioned purchasing something at a discount, selling it for retail. How does, like, let's say someone goes and they find that piece of property and they, see, oh, okay, I can get this for, let's say, the 5,000 as the example. Is there like an equivalent of comps, or how does someone know that, yeah, this really is worth? Do you need someone that knows that market, or is there another way to kind of figure out what could actually sell this thing for?
Yeah, no, I love looking at like Zillow and Redfin. What's sold in the last 30 days? Nothing. Okay, let's go to last 60 days. Nothing. Okay, let's go to 90 days. Oh, there's one. And it's got to be an apple to apple comparison. Like, if I'm looking at 1.25 acres in this area, I want to be within about a mile of that 1.25 acres. And I want it to have sold in the last 6 months. Like, I want data that's kind of somewhat relevant within the last few months.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's the thing too. You mentioned selling at retail. Let's imagine if you took all the financing away, there was no more bank loans. Do you think real estate prices would keep going up or probably go down?
Yeah, they go down.
They would absolutely go down. Why do real estate prices keep going up? It's because the Federal Reserve's lending money to the banks at like nothing, and they're loaning it out to us for like nothing, 2-3%. So that creates such a demand because, oh my God, I can get financing for so little now. It's way cheaper than rent. So things go up. So that's how I'm able to sell my land for exactly what it's worth very quickly, because I get an affordable down payment and an affordable monthly payment. Because Americans think, how much is it going to cost me each month? Oh, you want to go out and buy that $50,000, F-150 because you can afford that $600-700 a month rather than coming up with the $50,000.
Yeah. Are there certain like characteristics of land that you specifically filter or look for? Because I always remember these stories about people buying swampland in Florida in like the 80s or 90s, and they're still waiting to, one, be able to do anything with it, and two, for the price to come back to where they actually purchased it for. I know it's not apples to apples because they're probably buying it at retail and maybe not doing as much due diligence on it as they should do. But what do you look for?
Well, there's a gentleman named Walt Disney that bought a lot of swampland in Florida and did quite well with it. But if you don't have the backing that Walt Disney had, so here's the thing with swampland in Florida, you got to know what you're getting into. You got to look at the comps. I mentioned the Zillow and the Redfin and landwatch.com. I look at the area and I want to see what's selling in the area. If there's nothing selling in that area, that means there's no one buying anything in that area. Or maybe there's just a lot of for sales and no solds. Like, I want to know what's going on. And before I pull the trigger, before I'll close on a piece of land, I like to have two things. One, a buyer lined up, and two, a realtor that's walked it and looked at it that is a land specialist, a realtor that has actually sold land in that area. Because we've almost pulled the trigger on some things that we actually didn't have a buyer lined up for. And eventually you get super confident. You're like, oh, I know I can't miss. I can't lose because I'm buying the land at like literally, $10,000 and it's worth $50,000. But that realtor might go and say, oh yeah, there's no roads to this. There's no access or things like that. They're like your eyes on the ground. When I got started, I was within about a 2.5-hour radius. And that's a huge radius, but you can get to it on a weekend if you need to. The first probably 10 parcels of land I went and drove to. And you know when I started making mistakes? When I stopped looking at the land myself and I just completely didn't even send anybody to look at it. Now someone's always got to look at it. And it doesn't have to be me or my team. We can hire someone, on wegolook.com.
Right. And you mentioned, access and roads. Are you specifically like, are there equivalents of like a fixer-upper where maybe the land isn't the most appealing, but maybe that's where you can get the value in because
Mhm.
there are certain things you can do that are maybe not that complicated that can add value to it versus looking for that perfect land every time?
I usually generally just try and buy it at such a discount and sell it. If I have to, I'll sell it for a discount as well on financing. And I like to let the buyers deal with that. There is one particular property, and I've purchased almost 325 parcels of land in the last couple of years, but there is one that we did just buy that we made a mistake on. Come to find out, the road stopped just before the land. So we're going to have that same guy that did that road. And it's when I say a road, I mean like he took a blade on an excavator and cut a road. It's not going to be paved.
Right.
It's not going to be shelled. It's just going to be cut so someone can drive on it. And then we're also going to request an address with the county. My VA in the Philippines is doing that right now. It's in Fremont County, Colorado. So we're going to get an address and we're going to push the road another 25 feet. That way, the realtor can let people drive right in there. So that's my fixer-upper. That's the equivalent to the fixer-upper for the land. And, I'm not afraid of renovations or remodels. We have a 19-unit apartment complex. We have our own office that we've remodeled and done all these things. But land, we got to keep it simple. And that's why I love land. It's like, it's so simple. There's no foundations to fix or roofs to repair. None of that stuff. It's truly passive.
Are there better locations in the country than others, or are there opportunities everywhere?
Yeah, I really recommend people starting within that first, 2.5 hour radius. And I believe there's opportunity anywhere there's land. Now, granted, are there better places? Like I love Texas and Florida and Arizona right now, because if you go to like the North American van lines, or if you Google, American migration map, and it shows you where people are entering and where people are exiting. If you go where the demand's at, if you get any like sort of a discount, you'll be able to sell it fairly quickly. I like to go where the demand's at and be just on the outskirts where there's still deals to be had. Like, hey, Tesla's going in Austin or whatever. Like I want to be, 50 miles from that,
Right.
and start sending offer letters to those landowners.
Sure. How does someone get started? I think that's a lot of times the hardest thing is to actually get started with something new so that you don't get discouraged as well. But when, because it was easy, everyone would do it. And I don't know, is there a dip your toes in this option, or is it all in or not?
I'll tell you exactly how I got started. Like I said, I was haphazardly buying houses. I was actually wholesaling houses, and we bought a few and put them on the MLS. But it was really hard with my Army officer job. I was on base like 13 hours a day. I was always on call, and I couldn't really go off and look at houses and talk to house owners and sellers and create rapport. So what I did was I went on the tax delinquent list, and I was like, look, all these people are not paying their taxes on their properties. And that included like houses, it included mobile homes, it included land. Well, what I did was I got a virtual assistant, and she was in India, and she's still with me actually. She basically separated everything, and it was very monotonous and time consuming, but she pulled all the vacant land out, all the addresses, all the sellers' names, and put them on a spreadsheet. And then we mailed them a postcard. We mailed out 687 postcards, and that got my phone ringing. It's all about getting your phone ringing, talking to sellers that could have some type of motivation. And these guys were behind on their taxes, so there was a little motivation. And come to find out, we were actually mailing the actual county-held tax lien list. And what does that mean? Basically, tax lien investors didn't even buy it last year because the land was like very inefficient or not accessible, not buildable, no road access. And I didn't know this at the time. I was like learning as I went. So that's why my phone exploded. And I did like 2 deals within 2 weeks on that list. And each one of those deals netted me over $4,500 each. And it's not huge money, but it was life-changing for me because the second one gave me $400 a month, which covered my truck payment. So how to get started? Find a list of landowners. You can go to priced.com or PropStream and pull a list of vacant landowners and mail 20 letters or 20 postcards a day. And don't stop. It's about getting that pump primed. You want to talk to land sellers. And all we're trying to do is get a piece of land at a discount. How do I figure out what it's worth? Well, look at the 3 lowest comps and get it for less. Get it under contract. And then we need to market for a buyer. How do we market for buyers? I found my first 10 buyers of land on Craigslist.
you also do not just investments, but you also coach people. Is it basically like a blueprint where you're, showing them, okay, step one, let's identify. Step two, here's how you get it on. Here's how you make your offer. Here's how you try and get it under contract. Or I guess that other step you said, which comes in there, is before you purchase it, you want to have that buyer lined up. But do you kind of create the blueprint that someone can follow to actually get started and be successful in this?
Yes, that's exactly what I do. So our coaching, I'm with Wholesaling Inc. I'm super proud that I'm their land coach with Wholesaling Inc. It's not just coaching, it's the blueprint plus the coaching plus the support. There's millions of books. We've got the libraries, but we can go and read the book in the library, but who's going to answer the question when you get around the corner and you run into this? So basically it's set up as a blueprint, the modules that shows you the videos of, hey, here's the step you take and here's the action step. Go do the action step, and then the result will come. Result being you find a motivated seller or you buy a piece of land at 10 cents on the dollar. The result will come, and then that's where the education. So it's like action-driven steps, and then we do support calls once a week. That way we can be there and support you because you're going to have questions, and then also have a support group to get questions answered each day. So it's not just coaching, but it's kind of like the full round picture, because I've been in a lot of seminars. I was kind of a seminar junkie, and I was always like, well, now what do I do? Because Monday would come and I'd get kicked in the face one time and I had no one to talk to about it.
Yeah. There's always reading a book or getting some kind of knowledge, but then the actual implementation or the execution, that's where a lot of people get tripped up. But vacant land, is it cyclical in terms of a lot of profit to be made in vacant land? Everyone floods vacant land, and then 6 months later it's mobile home parks, and then 6 months later it's apartment buildings. Or is it been like a constant? There's opportunities always popping up in that space, or is it cyclical where at some points there's better opportunities than others?
I feel like it's there's busy months. As far as cyclical, I don't think so, because there's either we're going to sell the vacant land for recreation for someone that one day maybe build that cabin. That's where our passive income comes from. And then it's like, hey, how do you get the cash to buy that recreational land on the outskirts? Well, right now we're in an absolute building boom because we're like 6 million houses short in the United States, because builders for the last 10 years are kind of like fingers have been burnt by the stove, like not building as many houses. So now there's a massive demand for housing. So we're getting these vacant infill buildable lots is what I call them, like stuff that's like ready to be built on. We're getting these under contract and then assigning them to builders or flipping them to someone that wants to, I don't want to compete in the market, so I'm going to build my own house. So there's always going to be opportunity for land, because it starts with land. If there's a mobile home park on it, a storage park, an RV park, or a house, what's got to be underneath it to build that stuff? And that's the land.
Mm-hmm. What are your tips for someone who wants to get started but still has that 9-to-5 job? Is it just to grind it out and they're gonna put in extra effort? And I know sounds like something that you did while being in the military and doing this as a side hustle to probably start with. But what should someone be thinking about, or what tips do you have for someone just starting but is also working at the same time?
Yeah, time block. I had to time block. I had to be on post by 6 a.m. So what would I do? I would get up at 4 a.m. and that's when my day would start. And you might, no way I'm getting up at 4 a.m. Well, maybe you're a night owl. I mean, when you put the kids down at 7, 8 o'clock, then that's the time for you to time block. And it doesn't take more than a couple hours a day to get this started. Because most people think, oh, well, there's no way I don't have time. Well, delete Facebook off your phone, turn your notifications off, put your phone away. This thing right here, our phone, is the absolute biggest time suck. We don't even realize how much time we're spending on like useless things every day. Cancel Netflix, cancel Hulu, all that crap. How much is Netflix paying us to watch it?
Zero.
Oh, nothing? Well, let's get in touch with some landowners and build some notes. Like, I just got off the phone with another student. He just got a 30-year note that he's going to be paid $5.99 a month for the next 30 years. Have his investment out in 2 months. And I was like, dude, how many hours did that take you? He's like, well, I started 6 months ago. I've been working this about an hour a day. I have a full-time job. There you go. The guy, to get paid $5.99, he literally has an annuity for the next 30 years, paying him $5.99 a month.
Yeah, it brings up actually another good point. So we're talking about time and how someone can time block or things that they can do. But what about capital? What about money to actually get started? Do they need to have some saved up? Can they use other people's money to do it? What do you see as some approaches that have worked?
There's so many ways. Like I'll tell you that for the first two pieces of land that I sent the 685 mailers, that first land deal that I did, it was two parcels of land, not buildable. I had no clue what it was worth. Me and my wife and my 2-month-old baby drove out to see what the land looked like. And we looked at it and I was like, this is amazing. This is awesome. I don't know why it's not buildable. So we were leaving. We called the real estate office that's close by because I was like, maybe they'll know. Well, the realtor that answers the phone, super sweet lady, on a Saturday, and I'm like running it by her. I'm like, hey, I got these 2 lots on Lake Avenue under contract. I just want to know what the 30-day blowout price is. What could you sell this thing for in the MLS quick? Because I was thinking, I'm going to have to buy this and list it on the MLS, but I don't want to get my money. Like, what if I spend too much? What if it's not worth it? I was like having all these negative doubts. Like, the land was $285. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm embarrassed to say it now, but I didn't have the money for that. So she gives me all this information. She said, I don't know about the 30-day blowout price, but she said, maybe $10,000. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? Non-buildable land? She goes, yeah, it's speculation. They're going to do a bridge, blah, blah, blah. So I thanked her for her time. I said, I'll call her when I bought the land. I didn't have a plan at that time. I was just trying to get off the phone with her. But I was excited that the land was $10,000, worth $10,000 in her mind. Well, she calls me back not even 5 minutes later and says, hey, Brent, what if I made an offer on the land? I was like, what's your offer? She said, $5,000. I said, great. When do you want to close? She said, Wednesday. 4 days from now? Like Wednesday? Like it's Saturday. She said, yeah. I said, send me the purchase agreement. Send me the contract. I gave her my email. By the time I got home, it was in my inbox. I called the seller. I said, hey, can I meet you on Tuesday and pay you the $285? He gave me a quick claim deed, which I don't get those anymore. And I brought it to the title company and got my $5,000 check the next day. So I gave the guy $285 that Tuesday night and got a $5,000 check Wednesday night. What if I didn't have the $285? Well, mother-in-law might have it that I can give her a transactional lending. Mother-in-law, I'm going to give you $100. Just let me borrow $300 for one day. Some people I know that will borrow the funds from their cousin. The land's worth $30,000. They're buying it for $10,000. Cousin Eddie's going to give them a loan for 6% on $10,000. And then, Mark, I'm going to sell you that land for what it's worth for $30,000. You're going to give me a down payment of $1,000. And you're going to pay me, $399 a month at 9%. So we're borrowing the money from cousin Eddie at 6% on $10,000, mm-hmm. And Mark, you're paying 9% on $30,000. It's just an arbitrage. That's all it is. I mean, that's what the banks do. They get the money from the Fed at 0% and lend it to us for 3%.
Yeah. Is there any opportunities for someone that maybe doesn't want to do every step of this, but maybe has money? You see them a lot in some traditional real estate investments where you can put money in, you can be a limited partner, and there's a real estate company that manages, maybe it's a fund, and they go out and actually do all of the steps. So it's like a truly passive where you're just investing. Is there any equivalence to that on the land side?
Absolutely. I'm doing it right now. We're developing a 300-unit RV park. We haven't purchased the land yet, but we got the site plans. They also have 19 vacant commercial lots that we can do site pads for things like Wendy's and Taco Bell. So absolutely. I'm personally raising funds for a deal that I'm going to be an owner in.
Yeah. And then going back to the person that actually wants to do everything themselves, you mentioned the realtor, but who else do you want to have on your team? And I guess you also mentioned maybe a virtual assistant to help scale some of this, but who else do you need, or should you have on your team working with you?
You know what? You kind of hit all the bases. It's and things evolve. Like I started one step at a time. The first thing was the mail. The second was like, hey, I'm tired of posting this stuff on Facebook and Craigslist, and they're asking me the same 10 questions every time. So I hired the virtual assistant, and she was in Argentina, paid her $5 an hour, and she was brilliant enough to say, hey, here's the frequently asked questions. Let's put it on a website. That way we can just copy and paste it when they ask. So, virtual assistant, good realtor, start talking to your local bank.
Yeah.
What kind of funds do you lend? Because most people think, oh, well, they don't lend on land. Well, have you went to a bank and asked what kind of land you would like to lend on? Because there's some areas that they want to lend $500,000 or more, or as long as it's $500,000 or more, they don't care if it's land.
Right. Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense. So we're just about out of time. Brent, I want to thank you for being on the show. You provided some really great info on land investing. How best can someone reach out to you, find out more information about what you do?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I have a YouTube channel. If you go on YouTube and search Brent Bowers, you can definitely find me there. Or I mentioned Wholesaling Inc., wholesalinginc.com/land. If you want to schedule a call, love to talk to you about it and see what your goals are. One of my team members will help you out. But yeah, you can find me all day long on YouTube.
Awesome. We'll link to all that in the show notes. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you for listening to the Agent of Wealth podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Bautis Financial. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional financial planning and investment advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investments and financial planning.